Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be talking about the High Priestess, or La Papesse. Even just the name change, kind of interesting, right? Like, I guess it would have been the Popess, or just the Pope. What was that one Pope? Johanna? That was, I think, just a Pope. Anyways, so what's the deal with this card? It's a woman. She is ice cold. That's certainly something that stands out. It's an ice cold woman holding a book, kind of maybe sitting on an egg, nursing, uh, roosting. Is that the term? She's got a crown, multiple layers. She is behind her is this like backdrop that is being held up outside of the frame. I think that's interesting. And also, what's interesting, she's one of the only things. The tip of her crown is one of the only things in this deck, the Marseille deck, that kind of breaks past the frame of the card, the card. Also, she's got those crisscrossy crosses on her chest. I'm not going to go into interpretations of all of those different aspects, but just for starters, I'm gonna try and cover the coldness, the frigidity, the inaction, the ice cold stillness, and how this is, in some cases a really good quality, in some cases something that people consider to be kind of a bad quality, right? Um, I think that a lot of parallels can be drawn between the relationship between this card and the magician, and in psychology, something like the broad trait uh, extroversion, introversion. So with the magician kind of being the extroverted side and the high priestess being the introverted side. Magician hot, high priestess cold. And it's kind of funny how many different words we have in the language that positively reflect on coldness and how many of them negatively reflect on coldness. So it's like cold, you're a cold bitch, you know? He's got a heart of ice. Is that one? Anyway, it feels like it's one. These are like kind of like insults that this person lacks empathy, lacks some sort of empathetic reaction to a thing, but then also being cool, or you know, ice pumps through that man's veins. It's like, well, in those cases, it's a good thing that these people are unresponsive. You should have seen them trying to fuck with Johnny, but he was just as cool as a cucumber. It's like that inactivity is, in some cases, it's a really good thing. In some cases, it's like you should be reacting. It's a bad thing you're not reacting. Um, from the little bit of personality psychology background that I have, there's an interesting neurological component to extroversion and introversion, and it has a lot to do with how extroverts and introverts differently respond to dopamine. And if you're cool because you're introverted neurochemically, um, you actually you get less of a strong chemical response in your brain when things happen, and particularly things that release dopamine. So you can be kind of more removed and detached, right? Whereas people that have a very strong reaction to dopamine, almost, if you watch their behavior, not all of them, but some of them, particularly the ones that are kind of like the class clown kind of person, the extreme attention seekers, the relationship between those people and the parts of their brains that deal with dopamine, it's almost like something between like a junkie and a heroin dealer. Like there are people that just pursue, they chase that hit, no matter what. Um, and so, again, it kind of just depends. Like sometimes one is good, sometimes the other is good. In this case, we're dealing with the high priestess. This is a reflection of how somebody or some people see you. This is an aspect, this is like an archetype that people can see within you. And now, are they seeing it? Are they seeing the cool, detached part in situations where this is a sought after, respectful quality, or is this something that you're catching some flack for, right? Um, depending on who you depending on who you spend time with, depending on who you're interacting with, it can make a huge difference. Like the same quality within you can be a deal breaker for some, or it could be something that people seek out. And one of the other aspects of this card that I like, that I feel like also kind of fits in with this, is this book. And with this particular Marseille deck, which allegedly is the restored, most accurate deck to whatever the original was, and color wise, this is an important thing. The book being flesh colored is significant. The flesh colors represent, flesh, things of humanity. It's kind of the halfway point between black and white in the tarot and in colormancy in general. So whereas black is this chaotic, you know, active, it could be anything, but it's chaos, it's unpredictable, but it's got all the potential, and white is this perfectly organized, rigid, frozen stillness. The flesh color is kind of like, well, this is the way things actually are for us humans on Earth. A little bit of both. It's kind of like gray, but it's a reflection of us being kind of chaotic, kind of orderly. And I think that, first of all, her having a book of, humankind, she's got the book. Did she write it? Is she reading it? You know, that is one of those interesting things that is to be interpreted. If this is how people see you, do they see you as someone who is writing down and cataloging their deeds? Is that one of the things that they might be negatively responding to if they sort of quantify you as the bad type of cold, still, setback individual? Are you reading the book of humanity? Is this one of the things that's advantageous about you? Do people maybe respect you because, you know, he or she, they don't get overwhelmed with situations? They could sit back and coolly just like watch things and learn and take in information, as opposed to just being pulled right into the fray with everyone else, right? Is that an aspect of it? And whichever sort of version of that people could be interpreting you as, um, it's on the sort of even more general level. It's, I think, important to see the book as the opposite of the act, the sort of the spontaneous act, right? And that's one of the things that that kind of book attitude will always be compared to, because the magician, the spontaneous, hot-headed, autopilot, just go do stuff. That spontaneity is that spontaneity does not involve self-reflection, right? Whereas the book things are almost entirely self-reflection. They're the It's when you're aware of something, where you could sort of, when you're just in the moment, when you're in the flow state, you're not creating a narrative description in your mind of what you're doing. You're like that Zen state, flow kind of state. It doesn't have words that accompany it in your head to describe what's happening. And in that sense, you're not writing it down. And then on the flip side, the kind of people who are often introverts, the kind of people who are cool and they stand back a little bit more, and they're not as involved, and they're not as reactive or hyper reactive, that often allows them the distance to not only, metaphorically write things down, quote unquote, but also to then look at what they're writing down, again, metaphorically, write things down about that. They can engage in, multiple layers of thought and, contemplation, consciousness, like those flow states, they're essentially unconscious in a lot of ways. But yeah, so there's those aspects that I think are worthwhile sort of, meditating on, considering if someone, if this is how someone sees you, if this is the impression you make to someone, consider how these different elements fit together. And then the last one that I want to touch on is the egg. And I just kind of like the idea of the egg being this thing where it looks it looks identical. It's an egg, an hour-old egg versus however old. Now I realize I have no idea how long, I guess, chicks or whatever gestate for. Is that even the word to describe it? But my point is that things happen inside of an egg. Growth happens inside of an egg. There's activity and movement happening in there, but we can't see it because we just see this outer shell. And I think it's an interesting choice for a symbol. It's this white, orderly, still kind of barrier where nothing happens. The egg is just sitting there, and it's that shell that prevents us from seeing all the activity that's happening within. Some of the most amazing activity. Cells are dividing, a complex life form. I mean, like, I think chickens are relatively complex compared to, a bacteria or something, right? A complex life form is growing and taking shape, but we don't see any of it because of this shell. And again, I think that might be an aspect of how somebody sees us. It's that detached outwardly, appearance, that lack of involvement hides all of the things that are, it conceals all of the things that are happening inside, all the changes. So, again, I think it's useful to ask yourself, in what situations is that a desirable quality? Is that a desirable way to be seen? In what situations is that an undesirable way to sort of be seen by others? Some interesting questions, I think, there to meditate on. Hope you enjoyed the video. Drop me a like if you did, and also feel free to comment free reading for your chance to win. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I'll talk to you then. Take care.